So, a few months back I did a run of Fire Emblem Fates while banning the letter A. If you haven't watched the video, maybe check it out after this. I thought it was a fun challenge, and it forced me into using a set of characters I normally wouldn't. A natural thought that came to me along with doing the challenge is how it would change depending on what letter I banned, which led to the No E challenge run we have today. For those unfamiliar with the rules, it's as follows. All characters with an E in their name are banned. Classes with the letter E in them are banned from combat, however, they can still be used as the support unit in pair-ups. This is just so I can get support points and minimal experience on them. And lastly, I cannot use weapons or items with the letter E in them. The only exceptions to this are seals, as they allow me to actually use valid classes. The only other thing of note here is that the run will be done in Birthright. This is due to there being far fewer things that are removed as compared to the No A run, making routes other than Revelation actually viable. As for me choosing Birthright over Conquest, I personally find Conquest no fun for doing these kinds of runs. With that out of the way, can you beat Fire Emblem Fates Birthright without the letter E? No. Kamui sadly starts off as a Nohr prince or princess, depending on the gender you chose, and both of those classes have an E in them. Not to mention, cases like this apply to literally every single playable character throughout the first 6 chapters of the game. However, as has been the case in the past, I'll apply the challenge rules after beating Chapter 6. This is due to gaining access to my castle, where we'll actually be able to do something about our units. Sadly, we only start with 1 dragon point, and thus can only buy the Dawn Armory or the Rod Shop. Now, I chose to build a Rod Shop, and I have multiple reasons for doing this. The first is to buy a Heart Seal to class change Kamui into an Outlaw. The second is to buy concoctions, which have multiple layers of importance here. And what better way to emphasize that importance than to talk about Chapter 7? As we start Chapter 7, we find that we only have 2 usable units, those being Tsubaki and Hana, and both of them kind of suck. Of course, I did choose to play as a gal in order to start with Jacob instead of Felicia. However, he's unusable at the moment due to being a butler. So, I have 2 healers that can't be used due to their class names, not to mention that Festals can't even be used because E, and no matter whether I choose to change Kamui or Jacob's class, they'd both still be fairly worthless when I can't buy new weapons for them. So, alright, let's do a 2-unit run of Chapter 7. It's manageable. However, I end up having to use half of my concoctions in order to survive, because Hana is bad at staying alive, and Tsubaki is bad at dealing damage. Also, because Silas aggroes on us before I can even reach the first Dragon Vein, so I can't use map healing. And once Silas is down, I'm reminded that this is Birthright. That's slightly less of an issue though, as we can finally rest and heal thanks to the nearby Dragon Vein. With free healing on our side, the map becomes much easier to finish. Luckily, things will get easier from here on out, as I've now gained the ability to buy Kamui a Yumi. We also got Saizo, who is a viable unit, however there's no easy way for us to obtain a valid shuriken for him to use. Still though, we can use this team to reach and recruit Hinoka in Chapter 8. For those who are unaware, Hinoka is the best. Starting off with great resistance, along with decent strength and defense, Hinoka is capable of carrying us through the early game. Add in the extra defense she gains from her guard Naginata, and she'll remain an extremely useful unit for the entire challenge run. Unlike Setsuna and Hana, who die here. I'm sorry to all Setsuna fans, we will miss her. However, 2 amazing things happen to us in return. First, Hinoka reaches level 10, which gives her camaraderie, the greatest skill to ever exist ever. For those who don't know, camaraderie is a skill that heals a unit when they're near an ally. We also end up picking up a chopstick, meaning Saizo can actually get some use. Before continuing on with the story though, I changed Sakura to a witch and obtained Mozu. Mozu isn't usable right now as a villager, but she's nice to have just in case. Now, as we move on to Chapter 9, we run into one slight issue, which is that we start near a ton of outlaws. Given that 2 of my 5 usable units right now are flyers, that's a problem. This forced me to play aggressively with my far squishier units in order to create a safe clearing for my Sky Knights. Once turn 2 ends, Hinata and Oboro appear on the field. Now, while both have legal names for this run, currently only Hinata is usable due to his class. So I make sure to recruit the 2 and hand Hinata an iron katana so he can be of use. It was also around now when I remembered that there are 4 dragon veins on this map that will heal all of your units to full HP. This is especially helpful when I can only use concoctions for healing. And for those unaware, the number of concoctions you can buy are limited until you unlock the Rod Shop upgrade after Chapter 13. Anyway, the remainder of this map is fairly easy, especially when Hinoka's high resistance means the boss literally can't do damage to her. Up next is Mokushu, the map that forces you to fight a ton of ninja. My first focus was to remove the archers nearby so as to make the start of the map safer for my Sky Knights. By doing so, I make it safe enough for Hinoka to push her way forward to delete the ninja. Due to her reasonable stats, Hinoka didn't really suffer many downsides upon being hit by a shuriken, so this was ideal. However, I forgot about the archer reinforcements that would show up nearby. Thankfully, I figured out a way to trap the reinforcements as they show up. There are only 4 valid tiles they can appear on, so I placed a Sky Knight in the center to essentially block the archer in a 1-tile zone. As they have no 1-range attack, they have no way of harming the flyer and are thus easy to kill. With the archer menace handled, the remainder of the map was smooth sailing. Speaking of smooth sailing, it's boat time. One of the first things I do here is use a Master Seal on Takumi in order to make him a Kinshi Knight. Now, because most of my usable units are flyers, this creates an issue for the map. Normally you're supposed to use Dragon Veins to create tempests that massively decrease flyer movement. However, that has the potential to cause more problems for me if I can't move my heavy hitters. As such, I tried to play through as much of this map as possible without using the Dragon Veins. It seemed manageable enough until every enemy on the map aggroed on me. In such circumstances, I fall upon my tried and true technique, throw all strategy out the window and simply hope someone important doesn't die. This worked wonderfully, as only Hinata died. It was also around this point that I realized the Fujin Yumi prevents tempests from slowing Takumi down, which probably would have been nice to consider earlier. With the map completed, we married Saizo as per community vote, which allowed him to become an outlaw. Doesn't matter right now though, as it's time for the easiest map ever. Since I've been killing off all unusable units, I let Kaden die before Hinoka helped me escape the map and get a game over? Huh. So, for those of you who may not have known this, including me, Birthright Chapter 12 has a weird bug where it checks if you have any living units on the field after Kamui escapes, but before giving you the victory screen. This means that if you have no living units on the field after Kamui escapes, then you trigger the army wipe game over. This is easily fixed by having Tsubaki sit around in a safe spot while Kaden dies and Hinoka takes Kamui to safety. Now on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Chapter 13, which I take rather slowly. By setting up Tsubaki and Hinoka into choke points by the start, I can get most of the Wyvern Riders and Cavaliers stuck on each other. From there, I was able to slowly clear the southern portion of the map before eventually baiting Camilla over. Now, as we're playing on hard, Camilla has Bowbreaker. This would normally be an issue, but Takumi chose to land a 23% hit chance like the mad lad he is. And with Camilla down, the map is basically won. It was at this point that I ended stream, and so between my streams, I decided to do some support grinding and the like, and now we have Flyer Emblem. And I'll be honest, this is the best way to play the game. Except for when there are bow users in the vicinity. As such, though, we end up blitzing past the border and easily handle the funny little furry chapter. Also, Kaze dies for the crime of his name. Chapter 16 posed some issue at first, thanks to the combination of outlaws and mages, and, not getting Takumi. However, once I chose to take things slowly, it became little issue. It was also around here when I realized Hayato is one of the best units on my team right now. Once the Grease Man was down, we questioned whether Takumi was a honk shoe or honk me kind of person. And from there, we followed Flora into another trap and decided it was the perfect moment for a family reunion. Saddened by the fact that she killed her own sister, Flora set herself ablaze. After such tragedy occurred, we took a moment to recruit our children. First picking up Kana, then Shiro, followed by Kiragi, and finally Mitama. Getting sick of saving children, I opted to skip Asugai and Rajat's paralogs. So we push forward with the story. And the next chapter is easy, as Azure pretty quickly reaches Leo and takes him down to low health for Shiro to finish him off. Next is the Rainbow Sage, and the Birthright version of this map is pretty fun. Though it's also kind of easy as a result. Hayato and Sakura manage the side of the map with 0 resistance, while everyone else handles the 0 defense side. Clearing out the central area was a tiny bit scarier, but it was a decent group effort. For doing this, the Rainbow Sage gives me a massive middle finger and downgrades the Yato to the Noble Yato. And no, it's not even allowed to sit in my inventory thanks to the stat boost that provides. Thankfully, we get another level with all these faceless. I kind of just turned off my brain while Chat and I talked about, Fire Emblem Engage and Ice Cream. I guess the boss has almost every breaker skill in existence, but it's fine. However, what's more important here is that I changed Ryoma to a blacksmith due to it being requested by at least one person in chat. This will come into play later, but what's great right now is that Ryoma can finally use the Rajinto. Now, while the last few chapters have been easy, Chapter 21 proved slightly more difficult. Mostly due to my faith in Ryoma being a bit too high. I corrected my mistake though, and chose to rush the boss once I made it past the second bridge thanks to Flyer Emblem. Chapter 22, on the other hand, was a return to the game being really easy, except for when I forgot the specifics of how tomahawks work in this game. However, there's little that can stand up against Ryoma. After we show Shura his place, we then meet Elise, a character who nothing bad will happen to. I mean, they'd never harm a character with 2 E's in their name, right? Camilla's rightfully worried, though, when she notices Elise joining the Anti-E Brigade. As such, she tries to kill us. Normally, Camilla would be an issue with how much she uses Dragon Veins to, destroy our health bars. However, camaraderie basically nullifies that issue, so it was pretty safe to send people out into the unprotected areas to bait enemies. Once a way was cleared, Azura was capable of killing Camilla, and the few enemies remaining ran to their deaths. As for Chapter 24, well, it certainly happened. I will say that I may or may not have invalidated my run, depending on who you ask. For, you see, I used the Fire Orb. I personally considered it fine, as I had only been considering weapons in terms of stuff in your inventory, but I'll also understand anyone who might consider it against the spirit of the run. As for actual happenings in this chapter, well, Azura was used to delete all the Malignite reinforcements, and I almost got Jacob killed, but thankfully 1 HP is more than 0. But most important of all, I was reminded that blacksmiths learn Lancebreaker, which means that Ryoma is now unkillable. This made Chapter 25 a joke, while Chapter 26 of Birthright has always been a joke. Also, at least Xander died for the crime of E. And for reaching the end of the game, the Yado has finally been upgraded to the Blazing Yado, so Kamui can finally use that again. After my associate blessed the run with her presence, Ryoma and Azura turned Chapter 27 into a joke. The only real issue here was Garon, but thanks to Shiro using Seal Defense, I was able to chip away enough of Garon's health for Kamui to somewhat safely defeat him. All that remains is Dragon Garon, and being a final boss in Fates, that means it's time to lose a ton of units. Tsubaki, Mozu, and Takumi were lost to enemy phase. However, all was good as Shiro survived to use Seal Defense on Garon, after which I sacrificed Saizo and Jacob for a bit of chip damage with some help from others, leaving Garon at 1 health for Azura to easily finish him off.
This can't be.
However, her invaluable strength came at a great cost, and thus we lost the best unit in Fates as we finished the run. So, can you beat Fire Emblem Fates Birthright without the letter E? Well, if you start the challenge once you gain access to my castle, then yes. All chapters before that are impossible though. As for how it felt to play the run, I think it was really fun. The start was extremely difficult with access to only 2 units. I likely could have made it easier had I promoted Kamui to a Bow Knight at the time. But once we got Ryoma, the game became fairly easy. At that point, I had enough characters to make up a full army if I so desired, and plenty of good classes available to me. And the game only became easier once I made Ryoma a blacksmith. It was still a lot of fun though, and I'm excited to do more stupid runs in the future. So join me next time as we beat Revelation by only working out at the library. I'm actually currently live streaming the run every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 PM Eastern Time if you want to catch it live. And if not, I guess you can subscribe to be notified when the edited video releases. Until next time.